Today, in the 21st century, it is the World Trade Organization that has adapted David Ricardo's ideas.
Elle a été très bien expliquée à l'époque par M. Ricardo, elle est toute simple. C'est que si vous faites quelque chose mieux que moi, et si je fais quelque chose mieux que vous, alors nous avons tous les deux intérêt à ouvrir notre échange. Je vais bénéficier de votre savoir-faire, vous allez bénéficier de mon savoir-faire. Ça, c'est ce que dit Ricardo, en gros.
60-second adventures in economics. Fear of foreign competition once led countries to try and produce everything they needed and impose heavy taxes to keep out foreign goods. However, economist David Ricardo showed that international trade could actually make everyone better off, bringing in one of the first great economic models.
Ricardo even gave the theory a name: comparative advantage. The theory was born out of a violent debate at the time over a high tariff on the importation of wheat, then called corn, thus keeping the price of bread high. It was Ricardo's way to fight the power of local landlords, encourage competition, and lower the price of bread.
Ricardo noticed the following. He says, look, imagine that England and Portugal, each one produces two goods. So he says cloth and wine. You see, you're producing two things, I'm producing two things. I'm better at producing this thing here, cloth. And you're better at producing wine. So why should I be producing cloth and wine when I can specialize, get my comparative advantage, my particular advantage at producing cloth, and produce more cloth? So I'll be producing more than if I specialize in both things. And then you that are better off at producing wine, you specialize in producing wine, and you'll be better off.
By specializing, they can then export these surpluses to each other and both end up better off. This is the principle of comparative advantage.
Il avait des hypothèses extrêmement particulières. Il y avait plein emploi, tous les pays avaient accès à la même technologie. Donc il y avait, comme les magiciens, si vous voulez, il y avait un truc. On a oublié le truc et on a vendu comme universelle la loi que tous les pays ont intérêt à utiliser. Et alors, à une époque où il y a quelques cyniques, on a utilisé de façon rhétorique ce résultat théorique pour forcer les marchés.
So is Ricardo's theory a magician's trick, or an engine of growth and prosperity?
Foreign trade is highly beneficial to a country, as it increases the amount and variety of the objects on which revenue may be expended, and affords, by the abundance and cheapness of commodities, incentives to saving and to the accumulation of capital. David Ricardo, The Principles of Political Economy and Taxation.
Monsieur Ricardo avait imaginé son système, mais dans un monde dans lequel la distance était encore un facteur de viscosité de l'échange international. On était loin, les transports étaient coûteux. Ce qui s'est passé depuis M. Ricardo, c'est que la technologie, les modes de transport, la conteneurisation, Internet, ont incroyablement rétréci ces coûts de l'échange qui étaient liés à la distance, de telle sorte que sa théorie devient beaucoup plus efficace aujourd'hui qu'elle ne l'était dans le passé.
Our investigation into the theory and its adaptation in the 21st century begins in Flint.
When I was working over here for the first time when Division 11 was at its peak, I was probably 25, 26 years old, and I think about the enthusiasm, you're not thinking about what would happen, 20 years down the road, really. I had a secure job, loved my job, loved being an electrician, loved the people. At that point, I was starting to get involved more and more with the union, so talking with them more and more, having more discussions with management and standing up for their rights. So I was really coming into it as things were starting to decline. But to see weeds grow where we used to build things that were in every General Motors vehicle is just, it's just terrible. Wow.
So if the magic did not work in Flint, it supposedly should work in Mexico, General Motors' new home.
Estados Unidos es un país intenso en capital y México es un país intenso en mano de obra. Si nosotros ponemos juntos a estos dos países, sin duda alguna, tiene que haber una gran complementariedad y eso también es lo que se ha visto.
But the magic does not work everywhere. In the Mexican countryside, free trade is not seen as a promise, but as a threat, with the opening of the country to cheaper U.S. corn.
Las gentes esas que están ahí al frente de secretarías y eso, hacen políticas agrícolas o agroalimentarias, agropecuarias. No, a nosotros, por ejemplo, no nos espanta el Tratado de Libre Comercio, pero yo siento que nosotros, bueno, como agricultor y como campesino que somos, estamos en desigualdad de circunstancias. Pues, por ejemplo, los productores gringos tienen muchos apoyos, muchos subsidios. Nosotros nos dan el procampo de 1,100, 1,200 pesos por hectárea.
But how did Ricardo reconcile the reality of seeking cheap labor and new markets with his vision of a win-win for all?
There are two important clauses that are made explicit in his book. One, everybody that loses a job in the production of cloth in Portugal has to get a job in the production of wine in Portugal, and vice versa in England. So everybody that was producing wine has to get a job producing cloth. So there is an intrinsic assumption that people can find jobs. Ricardo very explicit says no capital mobility. So you have to assume that the capitalist that is deciding to produce the cloth because you're good here, because you have the technology, doesn't have the following idea. Wait a second. They don't produce anything. They have very low wages. They're willing to work for peanuts. What if I take my technology here and move it to the other country and produce from there and just sell here?
So GM leaving Flint had nothing to do with free trade or David Ricardo, but everything to do with a search for cheaper labor.